There are two big ideas on what this game should be, but these two ideas conflict with one another. And I find it so interesting that I keep pulling out the game and revisiting it, but because of this conflict, I've never beaten the game. Let's fire it up. When you boot up the game, it jumps right into a cutscene explaining what you are about to play. Nemo awakens to find a blimp outside his window. A messenger emerges to invite Nemo to Slumberland for a playdate with the princess. The princess has sent Nemo a gift of candy, so he agrees to come along. In the first dream, you meet Flip. He lets you know how to use the candy you were gifted to befriend the animals in Slumberland. If you can befriend an animal, then you can ride it. Different animals have different abilities. They may help the player traverse the world by granting extra jump height, the ability to walk on walls, or the ability to dig through dirt. You will quickly learn that, like MC Kids, the object of the game is not just to get to the end of the stage. Instead, you will need to find all of the keys in that stage and unlock all of the locks on the exit before you can leave the stage and move to the next one. Now, the keys will be found all throughout the stage. Like MC Kids, many times a key will be visible on the screen, but unreachable to the player at the moment. The player will need to figure out how to use the different animals in order to get to the key and collect it. To get through the stage, the player will need to explore it for keys and friendly animals, be able to plan out a course to collect all the keys, and then find the exit. If the player finds the exit before having all of the keys, they will need to backtrack and keep exploring. So the first identity of this game is the world of Slumberland, the desire to explore it and befriend the creatures that live and work there. Now, please let me go back and retell the story of the first stage, but with a different point of view. In the first stage, you will meet Flip. He will ask what a young boy is doing here. It's much too dangerous for little boys here. The only actions available to Nemo are jumping and tossing candy. Candy will stun enemies so the player can get past them. Some creatures won't attack you, but they still hurt you. If you feed them candy, then they will let you ride them. They will grant the player new abilities, like a melee attack, a jump attack, and an extended life bar. These creatures behave like Yoshi and other power-ups in the Super Mario games, changing the form and actions available to the player. The player can use these to defeat and get past other enemies and obstacles in the game in an effort to get to the goal at the end of the stage. So here, we find the second identity of the game, an obstacle course filled with tricky jumps and enemies at every turn. The object of this game is like a Super Mario game, to get past all of the obstacles, defeat the Nightmare King, and rescue the princess. I feel like these two game identities conflict with one another. Allow me to contrast the two games that I'm using to compare them with in a little bit more detail. In MC Kids, enemies were scarce. Proficiency in this game is measured by how well the player can explore a stage, navigate its platforms, and use the tools provided to find and collect the puzzle cards. In MC Kids, the player is allowed to explore and come up with plans and ideas and then execute them without enemies around, because when enemies are defeated, they don't respawn. Extra lives are prevalent and awarded frequently for exploring and helping the player get into the habit of poking around different parts of the stage. In Super Mario Bros., you have enemies that are constantly appearing to challenge the player. Every time Mario takes a step forward, there's a new enemy or obstacle to contend with. The player will use power-ups to get extra chances to progress, even after being hit by an enemy. Proficiency in this game is measured by how well you can navigate around and through the different obstacles to make forward progression. In Super Mario Bros., the player is constantly being nudged forward. There are no offshoot paths to explore, only obstacles and enemies to get past. The exploring in this game is regulated to finding shortcuts and power-ups, and those are used to help the player get through or around any future obstacles that they encounter. So, both of these ideas come together to bring us the engagement hook of Little Nemo the Dream Master. The player is supposed to have fun exploring the stages and finding the keys, and mastering the animal friends and their abilities in order to overcome all the enemies and obstacles in their way. But instead of complementing one another, I find that they just get in one another's way. Let me keep explaining. In MC Kids, if you're having trouble exploring one stage, then you can move to another stage and come back to this one later. But you can't do this in Little Nemo because once you beat a stage, there's no reason to return to a previous stage. The same way, once you beat a stage in Mario, there's no reason to go back to it, so you can't. In Super Mario Bros., your power-ups are carried from stage to stage. So if you do better in a previous stage, then some of that progression will carry with you into the next stage. But you cannot do this in Little Nemo, because the stages use the power-ups, or the animal friends in this case, to gate progression in the stage. And if they let you bring any animal from the previous stage, then you would just need to forfeit that animal anyway to get a different one, because the stage will require more than one animal friend to collect all the keys. In an exploring MC Kid style of play, players shouldn't be punished for experimenting and trying new plans to collect the puzzle cards. So extra lives are plentiful. Often they're placed at the beginning of stages, so the players can collect them and then freely explore without worrying about dying. If they do, they can start the stage again and collect the 1-up, and so there's no worry about getting a game over. But in the obstacle course Mario style of play, extra lives are only given to the player as they collect 100 coins or find a hidden 1-up mushroom. Lives are sparse because the goal of the game is to show how proficient you are at navigating the obstacles. So what we get in the end is a Slumberland that is riddled with respawning enemies that are constantly nudging the player forward, saying, collect the keys faster, reach the end of the stage, so the player will need to dodge and eliminate enemies as they go. But sometimes the player doesn't know which way is forward. Let's say that they have found all the keys except one, but the stage is very large with many branching paths. Instead of exploring a different stage and coming back to this one, the player is constantly getting barraged with enemies that want the player to move forward, but the question the player is asking is, which way is forward? So we have this conflict in the engagement hook. You're given a wonderful, charming world to explore, but far too many hazards that would make exploring engaging. So it can be a bit of a mess. But I love this game. The world of Slumberland is so colorful, and it's so charming to be in. Now, the enemies that will do harm to Nemo and the enemies that Nemo can befriend are telegraphed perfectly. The ones that can be recruited and be friendly don't move. The ones that are there purely to harm Nemo will constantly be coming at him. They'll be charging him. The creature riding mechanic is fascinating. It's like Kirby's copy abilities before Kirby did it. And while you're exploring, you never know when you're going to find a key or a new animal buddy that you can ride. And when you do find a new animal buddy to ride, you're in for a treat, because you don't know what abilities you'll have, and so you have fun experimenting and learning what this new animal buddy will get you. As you explore a new stage, you begin to plan out a big picture strategy, kind of like playing a Mega Man game. After you discover and explore the different stages and the weapon weaknesses of the Robot Masters, you can create a master plan for how to tackle the whole game. Well, that's what you do in this game. You go and you explore the stage, and you'll find all the keys, and you'll find all the animal buddies, and you'll begin to plan out your best route to get all of the keys and get to the end of the stage in an efficient manner. And when you pull that off, it just feels great. You're like, oh yes, this is what I came up with, this is how it worked, and it felt great as I did it. In fact, once you know your best route, then it becomes very much like a Mario game, where the object is just to get through all the obstacles. But in truth, this analogy probably better fits Castlevania instead of Mario, with the respawning and constant barrage of enemies. But I haven't revisited Castlevania as recently as I've revisited Super Mario, so I wanted to use that for the analogy this time. If you ask me what Little Nemo's like, I'd say it's like MC Kids fighting with Castlevania, with the power-up system of Kirby and the satisfaction of beating a Mega Man game. I haven't beaten it yet, but I'm going to keep revisiting it.